Welcome everybody to the number 200. You are the lucky 200, Leigh, episode. Wow. So super excited about that. I am Jason Sisneros, also known as the Bald Avenger, the tattooed guru, the purveyor of all things common sense, the king of the Misfit Nation, and a legend, Leigh, in my own mind. Okay. as we know, we've been traveling around. Tonight's guest is Leigh Dundas. Before I met her, a lot of you that are going to be watching the show tonight have seen a video from her fighting the powers that be in California. And when I saw that video, I instantaneously fell in love with her. She became a hero of mine in fighting for freedom, for sovereignty. And, you know, I'll post that video later so you guys can see. I know a lot of you have already seen it. You've had a lot of people when I posted pictures of us in the Instagram and our travels. Everybody was super excited and saying hello to you. I know you're often kicked off of Facebook, so I'm just going to kind of update you that you still have a lot of fans out there.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Absolutely. So, but Leigh Dundas, if you don't know anything about her at all, she's a human rights attorney and activist and has fought against human trafficking and has fought for the rights and freedom for truly oppressed in her lifetime. And I'm super happy to have you here. How you doing?
I'm great. I apologize if it sounds like there's a pack of wild dogs in my background here. That would be a teeny tiny Chihuahua and a slightly larger dog who have decided it's time to wrestle since I couldn't seem to get reception inside my house today. Thank you, big tech and the government, or maybe it's just bad luck. So I'm sitting in my backyard, and if it sounds like there's rabid dogs having a dog fight in my backyard, that would be why. Not my preferred studio, but you know, you do what you got to do. So here we are.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of bring us up to speed on why you're such a warrior for people.
Well, that's a good question. I used to have a completely different intro. I've been an attorney for almost 30 years. I would say I'm a human rights attorney now. That's not how I got my start. I got my start representing Fortune 500 companies in high stakes, high dollar litigation in federal and state court here in California. That was back in the early 90s. And did that for a while. It was quite the education, but it wasn't exactly gratifying at a soul level. You know, I felt like I was shoveling money from one large entity to another, and that's not to say if they were aggrieved or wronged, that they didn't have a right to get their money back from whatever the contract dispute was or whatever it was. But it didn't really feel like I was making a huge change at the end of the day. And it didn't help that I did environmental law, so a lot of the companies that were our clients were not exactly companies that I felt a particular affinity for. I'm a bit of a save the trees, save the whale, get rid of the Pacific garbage patch kind of gal, always have been. So to be representing large companies in environmental issues, we were generally speaking representing the corporate polluters, the people who were contributing to the pollution of this planet and the demise of it. And it was just not my preferred thing. So after a while doing that, and then being a mom, which was a new and exciting thing for a while there, I decided to start doing work that was gratifying at a very, intrinsic level. And I got an offer almost 10 years ago now, back in 2013, to become general counsel to an anti-sex trafficking organization that's based here in Orange County, California, and start fighting against the human trafficking industry, in particular the child brothel industry in Southeast Asia. There's, as you well know, because you do the same work, Jason, and by the way, if I have not said it yet, thank you for offering me this chance to be on air with your viewers tonight, and give a shout out to folks who are doing God's work and fighting for our constitutional rights and freedoms and fighting against the evildoers on this planet. But yeah, we were fighting against the child brothel industry. It's a fast-growing economy. It's the single fastest criminal economy in the world in terms of its growth rate, and the second largest overall. And the notion that slavery would be experiencing a comeback in our day and age is just downright frightening and appalling. So I started doing that work primarily in Asia. I did some domestically, but a lot of it was in Southeast Asia, where the problem is much more overt than than it is here. The children are by and large a lot younger, and they're very sort of in your face. You go into a quote bar, it's really a brothel, and you can order a beer, and you can order a burger, and you can order a child by number with your burger and your beer. And America has a huge trafficking problem as well, but it's not quite as in your face as the stuff we see in other countries. So I started doing that work, fell in love with that work, still in love with that work, and that's what I was happily ensconced in doing up until March of 2020, when I thought, I think we're suffering a similar but different, but equally, I think, frightening issue here in America and now planetary wide, in terms of the loss of our freedoms in this country, our constitutional freedoms, over something that is quite simply a false flag event. You have a virus that's 99% survivable, with zero intervention for people who are basically under 80. Even the over 80 fare pretty well if you get them the right interventions. And we are using that to systemically take away our constitutional rights. So when that started happening, and we couldn't travel to the countries I like to do work in anyway, I started switching gears a bit and doing more of the human rights work in terms of trying to preserve our constitutional freedoms.
Right. And then that's where, our paths crossed. And
yes.
Well, first my eyes crossed your path because, again, watching those videos. So talk a little bit about that video for those of us or those people that are watching that didn't get to see it, that sort of blew you into the space of fighting for freedom and sovereignty.
Yeah, there's been a lot of videos, so I'm not sure which one you're referencing, but if you were to Google my name, which is Leigh, L-E-I-G-H, and my last name Dundas, D-U-N-D-A-S, and type in the word Tulsa, as in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I gave a speech there a couple of months ago, and I recapped within the confines of that speech a couple of the earlier speaking I had done, speaking out against our county board and our superintendent here in Orange County. But long story short, there were two issues that had arisen around the same time in the spring of this year. Orange County lost its damn mind, to be perfectly frank, and decided they were just going to turn into the Fourth Reich and do a digital vaccine passport. Although after doing some surveying, apparently they decided not to call it that because the word passport tends to scare people. Shocking for anybody who didn't sleep through their history class in World War II history. Of course, it's a horrifying word. It's how Nazi Germany started. Show your papers before you pass. So they were going to do a digital vaccine passport. They buried it in the agenda. They changed the name to a vaccination verification system. And they thought they were just going to sort of slip this through, but a bunch of the eagle-eyed, mainly mommies, some daddies, but the moms are usually the ones who are up on it, I think brought it to my attention. We started showing up at our board meeting in Orange County and really fighting back. And that should have been enough, but I had done a spiel there. I think it was about 60 seconds that they had given us that day. And I said, you're not, by the time you get done with this, you're not going to need a Warsaw ghetto. I won't be able to leave my house and go grocery shopping. Right. And what the hell are you thinking? I don't care who you are, what side of the political equation you're on. This is inherently discriminatory against old people, minorities, vulnerable citizens who don't own smartphones. 40% of people over the 65 benchmark don't own a smartphone. So it doesn't matter if they got their vaccine. It doesn't matter if they have a cute little QR code on their smartphone that they can show to get into Sprouts or Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. If they don't own a phone, they can't show the code. And what are we going to do? Starve grandma out of the grocery store because she's, technologically illiterate? And what you saw was the left uniting with the right, which is kind of rare these days, and saying, we had the ACLU types out. We had travel alliances out saying this vaccination verification plan is a bad plan. And we called out our board and they did not roll it back. So then we released a TV ad. We fundraised a couple $100,000 almost, paid to put a TV commercial on air that was a 60-second spot. It was a Holocaust survivor who's still alive, who said in no uncertain terms, this is a Nazi plan. This is exactly how Hitler started hunting my people in the late 1930s. And I shudder to think that places like Orange County, California are starting down a Nazi path. And CNN and Fox and MSNBC were not thrilled to run our TV spot, but they did. On prime time, 7 to midnight for a week. And we asked everybody who was this side of the Mississippi to show up at the next board meeting. And we had about 2,000 people there, and we fought it down for now. Now, of course, LA County in the last week has decided they're going to do the same. If you're of a mind to donate so that we can run this ad to do the same move in LA County that we've done before, that would be a good call. And then the other video that went heavily viral was when our Orange County superintendent and our Orange County health officer decided they wanted to vaccinate children without their parents' consent or knowledge behind the backs of the parents with no notice or anything to the legal guardian. So we showed up on no notice in front of the education board and gave them hell. And I said, the last people to experiment on children without informed consent were the Nazis under the tutelage of Joseph Mengele, who did all sorts of experimental medical protocols with no regard for the health or safety of the children with whom he had been entrusted. And the Holocaust did not end with those experiments. It ended with the Nuremberg trials, when we put the people who committed those atrocities on trial, and then we put them to death. And you wouldn't think that I'd have to give a tutorial to an education superintendent. But I did, and that thing went around the world. It's come back to me recently with Japanese subtitles. But both of those spots are wrapped up in the spiel I did in Tulsa, where I discussed these issues at greater length. And we're not done. I barely got home. I barely unpacked from the 3-month tour that you intersected with me, Jason. Mm-hmm. And I was dropping my daughter off at her new part-time job, and I got a call saying it was the first day of school in Tustin Unified School District. And the new principal at my daughter's old junior high decided to take a kid with a medical disability who has a 504, which is legal speak for I've got a legitimate disability, and the school district has to recognize it and make reasonable accommodations for my child. And they kicked him out of school without a mask at 8:30. And this kid stared down principals, vice principals, secretaries, administrators, teachers, and held his flippin' ground. 12 years old, first day of 7th grade. Wow. And the mom called, fit to be tied. I said, let me get back to my house. Let me get a bullhorn and a portable stage, since I had not disconnected it yet from the expedition. And I put the word out, and we had a couple hundred people there, probably in about under an hour. And the reason I look like a cherry on screen tonight is because I was not planning on going to an all-day rally when I left home, having had no breakfast or lunch, but we just got back. And the principal thinks she can kick out kids who have a medical exemption to mask wearing with a doctor's note. And what people don't understand is not every person can safely wear a mask. If you have cystic fibrosis, that's a condition you're going to die from. It's a lung condition. You cannot safely wear a mask. I mean, I'm not trying to practice medicine, but go talk to any doctor, anybody trained in the medical field, and they'll tell you that. You've got one lung because you're a Vietnam vet and it was shot out in the Vietnam War after you served our country defending our freedom and freedom around the world. You probably can't safely wear a mask. You've got all sorts of other medical conditions, COPD. There are lung conditions that legitimately prevent people from wearing masks. It's not about whether they want to or not. It's not about a political statement. It's simply a disability. And what the educators are failing to understand in this instance is that child has a constitutionally protected right under the federal constitution and California state constitution to go to school on campus and be educated. And in the same manner, you can't kick out a kid because she's female or a child because they are not white. And the same manner, you can't kick out a blind kid because you don't like their damned dog who happens to be a seeing eye dog. You cannot medically discriminate against a child with a protected medical disability. And, it didn't seem to matter that we educated her on the law with our bullhorns. She's continuing to dig in her heels. So we're going to be back at 8 a.m. tomorrow in front of Hughes. That's HEWES Middle School in Tustin, California. School starts at 8:20. The child has indicated he is going back to school. The mother has indicated she is going back to school. And on my dead grave, am I going to let those people show up without reinforcement? What people don't understand is this is everybody's fight. I don't give a shit if it's your kid or not. Mm-hmm. This is injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This is Martin Luther King. This is neutrality only helps the oppressed, never the oppressor. And I was sitting, Jason, in front of 6 Orange County sheriff officers. None of them pretty much were white. None of them were male. And if they were male, they were not white.
Right.
And the guy is saying to me things like, well, I disagree with your analogy to Rosa Parks. I'm like, I don't have time to school you on Title VI and Title IX of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, but let me explain it to you simply. You know, Governor, whatever his name was, Faubus, I think, in Arkansas in the 1950s, after we desegregated, took 9 Black children who approached Central High School and said, you're not coming onto high school in my state, despite the law saying you have to be allowed onto the high school. And he ordered the National Guard in that state to do his bidding and escort those children on September 4th, I think it was like 1957, I want to say, off campus, including the iconic picture we've all seen of the little Black girl who didn't get carpooled with the other 8 students because I think her family didn't own a phone or something. So she walked in with her 1950s dress and her notebooks in hand like this into basically a firestorm of hate. People were spitting on her. People were saying, thousands of people rioting, saying, you don't have a right to go to school because of your skin color. Mm-hmm. And at that point, various attorneys filed civil rights actions. 15 days went by, and President Dwight Eisenhower said, you are going to integrate this state come hell or high water, and if you don't do it, I will. And when Faubus again said he wasn't going to stand down, Dwight Eisenhower overrode, sent the National Guard in to escort the Little Rock Nine onto campus, and then there was so much rioting by the people who were misguided on this issue that the National Guard turned tail and escorted them back out. And the next day, which I think was September 20th or 25th of that 1950s year, he ordered 1,200 troops from the 101st Airborne Division of the Army out of Kentucky, Fort Campbell, to go in and take control of the National Guard in that governor's state and get those kids ass in chairs and get them educated.
Well, we don't have an Eisenhower in office right now.
No, we don't.
That's for damn sure.
No, we don't.
Yep. We have,
this one is on us. This one's on us. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I've loved about traveling with you, getting to know you, and breaking bread with you, and getting to hear you from stage, and getting to see your interaction with the people from across the country, right? And showing up in some instances 6 hours or with the 6 hours notice, and having hundreds and thousands of people that show up to listen to this message, right? What you do so well, and I'd love for you to do it here, what you do so well, and I just loved it. I mean, it was literally like going to history class. I'm a huge history buff, and just listening to it, I'm like, yes, 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 and yes, right? And to hear people, like, I tell people in business all the time, I love that we live in a day and age where customer service is a new idea, right? And I look at our historical, that's not dangerous. That's an opportunity for businesses that understand it's not, you don't want to put people at arm's length with your technology. You want to bring them closer and have customer service. Like, I love that as now it's an innovation. But historically speaking, we always say history is bound to repeat itself. And here's why: we forget it. We don't, not only do we forget it, with as much access as we have to knowledge, to information, it's literally now on us. Before, you could be put to death if you were a woman and you were educated. You could be put to death if you were Black, and if you go far enough back, educated, a white slave in the Middle East or in different parts of the world, right? Education has always been punishable for the underclass by death. By death. Right.
Because it's power, and they don't want you in power.
Right. And now we live, the world is at our fingertips, right? Even though it's being filtered still by, some people that are taking over that role of disseminating knowledge, because we commoners can't possibly think for ourselves. right?
Of course
So now there has to be filters, and they have to shut one side down, and they're doing their best to overturn our Constitution. So give us a little historical context, as only you can do, as to where you see us now. I know that there's a wide and varied belief system, for lack of a better term, in the United States, of where we are on the pendulum between, absolute freedom and absolute tyranny or dictatorship or Marxism or, all of the communism, these types of things. Where do you think we are in that spectrum? If here's 0 and here's 100 towards being completely dominated, where are we percentage wise towards tyranny or a Marxist state?
I think we're largely there. I think we're pretty far gone. And with that said, because that's a horrible thing to say, I don't think they're going to win. I think the people are going to win. It always goes like this. When tyranny comes to town, they push and they push and they push. Hitler thought he was going to win. Pol Pot thought he was going to win in Cambodia. Stalin thought he was going to win. Khrushchev thought he was, people think they're going to win. And eventually, it takes a while for everybody to wake up, but eventually the heat gets really high under people's behinds, and they go, holy shit, we're at the edge of a cliff, and if we don't fight back, we're going to fall over, and then we're never going to be able to get back up that cliff and get to justice. So it's a bit of a game of chicken, and you see the most growth after you see the most oppression. So we have a Nuremberg Code that prevents experimenting on anybody without informed consent, which everybody is forgetting about in this day and age. But that grew out of Hitler's Nazi Germany. We never would have had a Nuremberg Code. We never would have had the kinds of informed consent laws we see in the medical context without Nazi Germany. We never would have a lot of the constitutional rights, the UN Declaration on Human Rights. A lot of these things were a response to a huge tyrannical push, and the pendulum swings all the way, and then people go, oh shit, and then you see it swing back the other way. So we're pretty far gone toward the cliff. If you look at it, I mean, there's different scales people talk about. There's 10 steps of totalitarian takeover. I sort of boil it down to about 5. They usually use a false flag event to whip society into a frenzy, because people are much more likely to do what they're told and be obedient to bad authority if they're scared. So they need to scare the population first in order to get their attention, and then in order to get them to go along with whatever the plan is. So Hitler didn't start Nazi Germany by saying, hey, I'm going to bake people in ovens. That was not how Hitler started. Hitler started with the Reichstag fire, which was a burning of a parliamentarian building in Germany, which he blamed on the communists. And he said, oh, the commies are coming, the commies are coming. And he ran around like Paul Revere meets Chicken Little, screaming about how there was a communist takeover, and the Nazis needed to band together to prevent the communist takeover. Well, what he did was use that as a pretext to change 400 laws in about 6 years. And those laws became progressively more draconian. They took away the rights of the Jews. They put them into camps. They put them into ghettos. They made them show passports. They took away freedom of speech. They took away freedom of education and religion, until you got to the final step. But the beginning of Nazi Germany was not burning people in Auschwitz. The beginning of Nazi Germany was a false flag event that allowed them to erode constitutional, natural human law type rights. And then, they blame the group they want to target. In Nazi Germany, it was the Jews. They often use a disease-based model because it triggers our fear factor better than anything else. Ooh, I'm going to catch a virus and die. So, the Jews were the typhoid Marys. They needed to be put in Warsaw Ghetto because they were dirty, they were cockroaches, they could transmit diseases to those of us who were Aryan. And that is how the prevailing narrative at the time went. This is for their own good. You keep like with like, you keep them away from us and for our own good. Now, of course, it didn't ever occur to anybody in Nazi Germany to go, we've lived with these people side by side, shoulder to shoulder, perfectly fine for decades, if not centuries, and they're not giving us typhus and they're not giving us any other transmissible diseases. Why are we so worried about this all of a sudden? They just push the fear factor. Everybody bows down, goes along with the plan. Once they get you sort of isolated, they blame you. You're the reason that this is spreading. And what we're seeing right now in society is they are targeting people who are speaking out, people like you, Jason, people like me, and they are blaming the people who are not masking, who are not vaccinating, for the spread of COVID, which is ironic because even mainstream media is now saying, hey, 74% of the people we're seeing are the vaccinated. You're getting more COVID in the vaccinated populations than the unvaccinated, separating out for the time being all the gnarly side effects that can kill you and then some. So, we can check that box. And then
check that box, and you have, just today, there's research, right? Thank God that we have the ability to spread the word, right? And we're starting to see. I mean, and Europe is kicking our ass as far as standing up for themselves, right?
Well, yeah, they just lived through Nazi Germany in the last 100 years, and we did not.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're kicking ass. They're like, we're not doing this. So the researchers over there aren't being blocked on Facebook. Their information is not being silenced. And so, just today they came out with 1 in 50,000. I put out a post today, which obviously got blocked, but 1 in 50,000 people are having a coronary thrombosis reaction to the vax, right? 1 in 50,000. Not like you and I fly a lot. What if 1 in 50,000 planes went down? Would we jump on the plane? I don't think so, right? Nope. And then you go even further to the ones here in the United States, and then I can't remember, so I won't say their names, but there's 2 vaccines that their efficacy, their ability to be able to do what they said it could do is now being proven out to be 72%, and one of them is 42%, right? Yeah. So the narrative that you see coming out, which is again strange, right? Is that it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and we're animals and we're this and we're that because your freedom, screw this, screw that. It's really it's chilling when you lay that over what happened in Hitler's Germany.
Yeah, and the depersonalization segment that you just touched on, that's huge. You are much more easily able to execute your neighbor or do atrocious, horrific things to them if they're not a person. So it's no coincidence that you refer to the Jews as cockroaches, or the Rwandan, cultural minority, or the Cambodian cultural minority as rats, as cockroaches. Because once you depersonalize the individual, you take away their humanity, it's much easier to treat them like an animal. It's much easier to do.
Talk about things. The test that you talk about from stage that they did.
Stanley Milgram?
Yes.
Oh, so Stanley Milgram was a Yale researcher in the 1950s who quite simply just wanted to figure out if the Holocaust was a unique one-off unicorn kind of an experience, or if it could possibly happen again. So he invited people from the surrounding community onto the Yale campus psychology department to take a memory test. That was how these people were brought in. And they were just average guys. They were auto mechanics, they were housewives, they were accountants, teachers, retired old folk, just the gamut. And these people were paired up, like you and I, Jason, would get paired up, and we were supposed to memorize little word pairs. So I would say purple, and you're supposed to know when I say purple, you're supposed to respond by saying unicorn, or I say house and you say umbrella, or whatever it is. And then they separated the pairs of people. So I was put in one room and you were put in a second room, and I could not see you, but I could hear you. I had an intercom. And then I was prompted to give you the first word in the word pair. And I would say umbrella, and you were supposed to respond with purple. And when you got the answer wrong, I was supposed to turn to a switchboard on the wall and flip a switch that would give you an electrical shock, because you had been outfitted on your body with electrodes that would give you a shock. And for every wrong answer you gave me, I was supposed to hit a successively higher switch that would deliver a successively higher amount of voltage to you as punishment for your wrong answer. And the voltages started out at like something nominal, like 9 volts. No big deal. Everybody's like a 9-volt battery. It's not fun, but it's not fatal. As the test went on, the voltages went all the way up to 450 volts. For those of you who are not good at math and science, that is a fatal dose of electricity. That is an electric chair dose of electricity. And so about halfway through the test, I would start as the person who was supposed to shock you for your wrong answer. I didn't know this. Nobody was actually being injured in the other room. I was hearing pre-recorded wrong and right answers from you, along with sounds of pain as the voltages got higher. So the higher the voltage, you'd be like, ow, ow, that really, really hurts. And then as it went on and I'm hitting you with higher and higher doses of electricity, you'd be screaming at me, you gotta stop. I had a heart bypass surgery. And if you keep this up, I'm gonna die. Like my heart's gonna stop. I can already feel it skipping beats. And that would cause, as you might imagine, a severe amount of cognitive stress to the person who was actually being studied, which was me. And I would turn to the researcher and say, hey man, not okay continuing to shock my buddy in there over these darn wrong answers. It's really neither here nor there. This is just a stupid test. And his heart sounds like it's going to stop. I'm not okay with this. And the researcher, who was a doctor in a white lab coat with the name Dr. So-and-so on his lapel, had been instructed to just say a couple words, which was, please continue. And the question was, what percentage of average law-abiding Christian American citizens would continue to follow orders, follow authority, follow the authority figure, and shock their neighbor to death just because the doctor said they had to, over something that was really an immaterial test. And when Stanley Milgram, the researcher, discussed this test in advance of doing this experiment with his colleagues, all of his buddies in the psych department were like, dude, you're high, or whatever they said in the, in the 1960s. They're like, nobody's going to shock their neighbor to death just because you told them they had to keep flipping switches. Like 2% of the population, the sadists, are going to do that. The Ted Bundys, the whatever, the serial killers, everybody else is going to stand up and walk out the wide open door. They weren't locked in the room. There was no gun at their head. There was no duress at all. It was simply, please continue. And they were shocked as hell when he did the experiment, because 2 out of 3 Americans would shock their neighbor to death just because the doctor said you have to continue the experiment.
67%.
65 point something. It was like 65.46%. Basically 66%. 2 out of 3.
Well, and just lay that over what we've seen since March of 2020, right?
Correct.
Lay that over when you're told, you have to, that all of this color people are now evil, and and anybody that's not believing in COVID, they're these type of people.
Evil.
And I watched, because one thing that really shocked me, Leigh, when I was going through this, I've always operated in business with a healthy dose of humility, because I believed that I had competition, right? I always worked really hard at educating myself, getting better, and because I knew I was a friendly, right? It's not guns and bullets war, but it's a war of intellect, execution, and hard work and sociability and all of these things, right? And I had operated under that healthy dose. I was thinking to myself during 2020, I have not ever had any competition, because 2/3 of America did exactly what they were told. Not just did exactly, because I think we all did during COVID. We were like, that's terrible, right? During the George situation, everybody was like, that's terrible. Not just one segment. There wasn't anybody that was cheering that police officer. Not one person that I knew, But like you said, there's always that 2%, the Ted Bundys, the idiots in the world. But you can't do anything about those types of people. You can't legislate morality. But you had all those, and then all of a sudden people were like, as Americans should do, started asking questions. Well, that doesn't add up. What this thing that's been on the books that would help this exact situation, now it's no good when it's been good for 50 years. What, like, just asking these questions. And 60, to your point, like 60% of the United States of America decided to attack their neighbors over their decisions because they were being told to by their political leaders, overlords, right? And being guided by their social media digital overlords, right? When you talk about communism, it's because the government goes in, they actually take over the businesses. And the businesses tank because government's not ever good at running anything. What we have is a much more dangerous situation, right? Is you have the government deciding to leave the business owners in the business for their combination of power, right? That is interesting to me, Leigh, that has been, because I've been railing against unethical capitalism. Ethical capitalism has changed this world forever, right? In a positive way. And unethical, when you get over to unethical, when you have businesses that can actually shut down competition and growth and innovation and those types of things, right? Now you have unethical. And it dawned on me, I'm like, holy hell, right? They're like, so, because we've heard this before, socialism, we've always made fun of it to say, socialism or socialists in the United States are just like, we just haven't done it right before. And we joked and laughed it off. This is interesting what's going on.
Socialism done right has one product, and that is communism.
Right.
And communism done right has but one product, and that is to make you all equal by making you poor and powerless. Because to disrupt the existing government in whatever society you're going to inject communism into, you need a party that's in a position of power to take those in power out of their position. And then you end up with a new ruling party. You are always going to have a ruling party. The best that we can hope for is a constitutional republic where we have statutorily codified provisions that protect the rights and the freedoms of who we are, particularly our vulnerable classes. And what we're seeing right now is a wholesale running roughshod over the top of these people. I mean, I'm standing there today looking at a Hispanic male police officer as a woman, and am talking to him, and he's like, well, I don't agree with your analysis. And I'm like, well, that's the beauty of America. You don't have to agree, but you need to recognize one damn thing right now. Neither you nor I would be here in our professions, but for the people who fought for women to have the right to vote and work, and for people of color to have the right to vote and work. So you were gainfully employed at Orange County Sheriff's because people like Rosa Parks stood up in a civil rights move. And now you're going to stand down instead of paying it forward. You're going to stand the hell down and not protect a 12-year-old medically disabled child who has a constitutional right to go to school in your jurisdiction. The hell are you playing at? You should be escorting that kid in like the 1,200, U.S. Army men did with the National Guard on September 25th of 1950, whatever it was, in Arkansas. But they have forgotten their history. And you know what they say, those who forget their history are going to be a victim of it all over again. And we need to push back. And on that note, Jason, I was sitting at a stoplight last night because we are far gone. The next step is passports. Once they can herd you out of businesses, out of schools, out of churches, and keep you in a confined area, whether that's a FEMA camp or your own house or whatever you want to call it, you're losing the battle. So we really need to make a stand now. Europe is killing it compared to what we're doing in America, because they remember their lessons of history, because their lesson against tyranny was 80 years ago, and ours was 200 plus years ago. But be that as it may, we still have channels of communication open to us. That is what Nazi Germany did so damn well. They took away the microphone of the Jews. The Jews could not get their reality out to the masses. And because they could not show the world what was happening in Dachau, in Auschwitz, in Bergen-Belsen, it continued. Right. And we may be censored on social media, but we are not censored from television right now. And we're doing this dumb. I hate to say it, we're doing this dumb. The people who are rich, and by that I mean the millionaires and billionaires in any state, in any country, need to start setting aside heavy amounts of their capital and realizing if they don't, it's going to be worthless if they're living in the functional equivalent of North Korea in a year's time.
Or Venezuela. Venezuela
or Cuba.
Is the third largest economy in the world, which is now they're killing zoo animals to feed their family.
Exactly. Or as you like to say from the stage, it's illegal to own a chicken in Cuba because God forbid you feed yourself. That takes power away from the government and their ability to control you.
That is chilling. Like that gives me when I heard that story, you get arrested. I want everybody to hear this. You get arrested if you own a chicken in Cuba and put in prison for 10 years because you have demonstrated self-reliance and not being 100% dependent on the government, right? That is happening off of our shores within float distance.
Right. And you were put to death in Nazi Germany if you listened to the truth on radio or if you disseminated the truth on radio. We cannot let it get to that point. It is already headed there on a gosh darn bullet train, like we're headed into Auschwitz, pulling into the platform right now. So what we need to do, because the TV stations are still allowing commercials to air, what my realization was over the last week is that people are not up to speed on what communism and fascism and totalitarianism actually looks like. People don't understand that we are psychologically hardwired to be obedient when maybe we shouldn't be, like the Stanley Milgram experiment. People are not up to speed on the Stanford prison riot and the fact that you could divide a class of graduate students at Stanford a couple decades ago into prisoners and guards, and they had so adopted the role playing that they were being sadistically cruel to the prisoners and depriving them of food and water and making them defecate into buckets and making them sleep on the floor, to the point that the guy's name started with a Z, I forget the experimenter name. They had to disband the experiment because it was a hazard to the mental health of those who were participating, both the guards, the people who would have been appointed to play the role of guard, and the prisoners. And when they disbanded it, the guards were the ones that were upset that they could not continue on in their sadistic role. We need to understand this. And there is a massive failing, probably due to a communist takeover of our education system that started in the 1950s in terms of disseminating this data. I don't know why I learned about this in college and so many people didn't, but I know this much. That is the answer. And if we can make 30 or 60-second sound bites, and we can pay Fox and CNN and MSNBC and Channel 5 and 7 and 9 and 11 and 13 in your area to educate people and run a side-by-side. This is the vaccine passport program. This is what it looks like. And this is what 1938 Germany looked like with the Jews passport. This is, Rosa Parks, and this is the Little Rock 9 children be escorted into school at the hands of the National Guard and the damned army. And this is a child being kicked out because he medically can't wear a mask. And you do the juxtaposed, historical lesson in a soundbite against the reality of right now. You are going to wake up the middle. And what we need to do in a hell's a fire hurry is wake up the middle. And the way to do that is with the tools that they watch in a way that they understand. They understand TV. We have, for better or worse, all been brainwashed to listen to programming that comes through the boob tube, and it is still allowing us to tell our side of the story. We need to make use of it. I'm calling on the people who are high net worth in this country to make use of that before that option is also gone. Because once that option is gone, like social media is gone, we're going to have a hell of a time mobilizing against tyranny.
Yeah.
And
it's already
been
difficult, it's been difficult. You and I have both experienced this, and I'm fighting that like hell with my influence, money, whatever I can to have this fight. And one last example, when you talk about people being able to educate themselves, because you're right. What I have found coast to coast, just like you have, as we've traveled around and had these conversations, what I find is that when you're speaking to somebody who has it doesn't enter their sphere of knowledge what happened in historical perspective, right? There is no historical perspective because we've had it so good for so long. And this generation, we haven't really had a challenge. And this is our war of retention of freedom and sovereignty, which has been fought for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for us to get here. Like I think about our founding fathers and our founding mothers and the people that fought for freedom during slavery and the people that fought for women's rights. And, all along, I think about them coming back to life and seeing what's going on right now and being so embarrassed that they fought and died for the right for us to be selfish, self-centered pricks, right? And to forget the foundation of which they built, right? So one of the things, I'm sure you've read this, but the Gulag Archipelago, right, by Solzhenitsyn, and it is a forensic deconstruction from the word go all the way through to the gulags, right, of how it happened and why it happened, right? And you talk about what there's one scene that gives me goosebumps every time I think about it, and it's in the first book. It takes, look, here's the problem. It's not a 15-second entertaining video with fucking dogs in it. Excuse my language, right? It is a three large chunks of reading. And you get into the first book and you hear this story where one of the guys got fired from the military and the whole entire town has to come in as the new guy is being appointed, right? And so they stand up and they have to start clapping, right, to show their respect to the new incoming soldier. And they're standing there clapping and clapping and clapping, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. You and I've been on stage sometimes, for 15 minutes, it feels like 2 hours. And for 17, I believe it was 17 minutes, they had to sit there and clap, and it had to get louder and louder and louder and louder. And finally, one of the local business owners who had I believe it was a paper mill, finally went, "This is nuts," and just sat down. That's all he did. And that gave permission for everybody else. They sat down. Well, guess what happened to the guy that sat down first? He went to prison. They put him in the gulag because he demonstrated independent thought, right? And a rebellious energy in front of everybody, and they didn't want that to catch. So what I'm saying to people right now is you better light up your inner rebellion, right? Your inner rebel. I don't think, like, I think if you and I met at different times, I would look at you and go, "You're a tree hugging liberal," right? And you
used to be on the social stuff. I was pretty conservative on the financial, but man, now it's a whole different day.
Right. It's a different day. And you would have maybe looked at me and, I've always been more of a libertarian, right? Just stay the hell out of, let people run what they run, but we are lockstep. Like we're lockstep, regardless of what you believe on the environment or all your other things. People have to hear the idea and listen to the fact that it is not Democrat versus Republican. It is elite and ultra wealthy versus poor and the have-nots. Period. End of sentence. And we all have to band together to say, you know what? This is not going to settle in. This cancer is not going to settle in our generation. This is our fight. Yeah. It's not white against black. It's not a vaccinated versus unvaccinated. It's not gay versus straight. It's not man versus woman. It's not any of that. It is those that would impose their will on us, right? The people that don't have that power and or those riches. It's up to us. It's up to us.
It really is up to us. You said it twice. If I could say it all day, every day, I'd probably put myself on record and say nothing but that. What all of the people who are looking to the lawyers and the doctors and America's Frontline Doctors and my group and other groups, Children's Health Defense California, save us is really the cry. And it's not that we don't want to, but I've got news for the listeners. No one person is going to be a white knight and ride to your rescue. There's no lawsuit. There's no legal action. There's no magic recipe that is going to liberate you. And I don't frankly think this is going to end like the Second World War did, where we saw England, and Churchill and finally America get in the game, albeit late and after we were attacked and they had to get in the game, but it got us off the fence. And come riding in when it was all or nothing. And sort of save the planet from the tyranny that Hitler was pushing down. I don't think that's happening this time because it's planetary wide.
Who the hell is there if America goes down as the shining hill, light on the hill, and England's fighting like hell right now, which is great. You have Hungary in the middle of it. That guy's getting beat to crap for what used to be almost a Democrat position, right? And we're sitting right in the middle of it. And I hear this I got interviewed the other day and I got asked that question, Jason, where are the leaders? And I said, everywhere.
Yeah, you are the leader. You are the leader you've been waiting for.
Nobody's coming to save you.
Nobody is coming. Right? You're it. But here's the beautiful thing. You know, the high school here has probably 2,000 students in it. I'm ballparking, but I'm probably close. I don't really care if you want to mask or don't. Stand up for the little guy who can't. And if 2,000 of those students walked into flipping the campus tomorrow, ripped off their mask in solidarity, you don't have enough Orange County sheriffs and California Highway Patrol, who they called in to back the sheriffs just today, to yank them out. You don't have enough administrators. You don't have enough teachers. There is not enough of the brown shirt Nazi types to promote this tyranny and make it stick. You know, if 40 million Californians stood up against Newsom, we'd be done. If all of the people in New York stood up against Cuomo, although he's finally gone now, you get the idea, though. He'd be done. This is a numbers game. You are the power that you seek. No court is going to rescue you in a blue state. The legislature is not coming to help you. The executive branch in a blue state is a goner, and our federal executive branch is the worst of all of them. So if you're waiting for that white knight, you're going to wait until you're dead. And that day may come sooner rather than later. And we need to start listening to the refugees from communist Cuba, from Eastern Europe, from South America. And you know who else we need to listen to? We need to listen to people like Jason Sisneros. The people who are out in front, who are awake, people like, how did you figure out so early that this was a Nazi agenda? And I said, because I was raised to be disobedient. I had one good parent and one bad parent. But let me tell you something. When you were obedient to the bad one, it did not make your plot and plate in life any better. You rapidly learned you don't turn the cheek because the other one just gets, double the measure the first one got. And I think a lot of kids who came out of non-optimal situations recognize that the people who were supposed to be in charge of their well-being were not necessarily doing right by being in charge of their well-being. And we had a healthy sense of distrust and disobedience because we watched and lived what happened when you were obedient to bad authority who beat the crap out of you, who made your life worse, who made your family members' lives worse, made your dog's life worse, whatever it was. And so we grew up speaking our voice, holding our ground, thinking on our feet, thinking in advance, being hypersensitive, hyper aware to environmental cues, because that's how they survived. That's how people coming out of those environments survived. And excuse me, Begsy, stop barking. Anyway, you need to be like my Chihuahua, a cricket jumps in the grass. This dog's ears, I don't know if you can see, are like enormous. Like talk about a ratter. Literally, if a bat farts a mile away, this dog barks. But that is the kind of sensitivity to environmental cues that we need to have. And I love Candace Owens. Did you see what she tweeted like 2 days ago? She said, well, now that the CDC has published a document overtly and with nothing on it discussing their plans for camps, for FEMA camps, I think we need to apologize to all of the folks that were excoriated wrongly previously, and we can be vindicated for basically making parallels to Nazi Germany. And I'm like, yeah, say it again, girl, say it louder.
I've had more people, Leigh, and you probably are in the same boat, where I started sounding the alarm back in March, right? I just wrote a historical post about, we had this, my live event is called Unstoppable. And we were the last one before the zombie apocalypse, right? It was on February 28th, got home, basically everything started to shut down. And I started sounding the alarms. I'm like, there's something wrong here. Like it doesn't feel right. And I lost friends and I lost followers and I lost all this stuff. And I had the conversation with those that were closest to me. They're like, Jason, for the things that you want to accomplish, you have to stop alienating people. And really I stepped back and I took a breath. It was like, when I got yelled at by a bunch of people saying, Jason, you have kids and you have family, you're going off to do these rescues. What if you die? And I had to pause. Like, a normal person pauses when people that are close to them say, hey, you need to think about something, but what I came to the conclusion of was if I died on a mission, saving children, from the most horrific things, like if I don't do it, who will? And what if
Correct.
that was my kid? You know what I mean?
Right.
What if it was my
Right.
kid? So
Right.
if I do die, then by God, my kids are going to know their father died for a good reason.
That's right.
And when I started going through this thing, I had to fight my team. I had to fight not, you know, I've got certain team members, but
Yeah.
they were like, look, we've got this, you know, great thing, and we're, you know, we're working on this, that, and the other. And I go, shut it down. Shut it down. I don't care if I look and here's my checkbook, and we're going to go on offense. Right.
Yep. Best defense is a good offense.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we did. And I have a lot of people now that are coming back around. I still have, you know, there's still like, you know, doctors that are out there that are still like, they are so addicted to that, you know, to that dopamine hit of, oh my God, people are liking my stuff because I'm saying how bad the, you know, this virus is going to be. And oh my God, my numbers have been right on. But you know what? All you have to do is watch regular media and CDC, and, you know, and all, why are these doctors that are out there? It's because they're feeding the fear. They're not like you are doing, which is out there knocking people in the head saying, wake up, nobody's coming to get you. You are your best warrior, right? You
are.
And you have those people that I've lost a ton of respect for, because that's what they're doing. They're feeding the fear. And oh my God, it's coming. The numbers are coming and you're going to die in mass amounts. And, you know, people isn't it interesting, Leigh, I want you to talk about this for a second. Isn't it interesting that the people that are the most compliant think that the people who are asking questions, the number one indicator, the ability to ask a great question, right, of intellect. That's the number one indicator of a good and a high intellect, is being able to ask a great question, not to have the answers, to ask a great question.
To pose the question. Yep.
And isn't it interesting that the compliance people think and call us the people who are thinking for themselves, and just not like, we're not telling people, we're not being, you know, universally people can be a dick. And here's why. Here's how I say that. Because here in America, people are shaming people for not wearing a mask.
Right.
Go to Sweden, right? Sweden or Switzerland. I get whichever country it is, but Sweden. I think it was Sweden. And where they didn't put mask mandates in place at all.
Correct.
And guess who now get the people that weren't wearing a mask, the people that decided or chose to wear a mask, guess who they're being a dick to, right? The people without masks are being addicted to people that wear masks. What I'm saying is leave everybody alone. Right. You know what I mean? Because exactly. Leave them alone. You don't need to be part of some mob. Do what you do and leave me the hell alone. And no, I'm not killing grandma. And no, I'm not part of some pandemic, you know, the pandemic of the unvaccinated. No, I'm not. Yeah. Leave me the hell alone. So speak to
government needs to get out of our relationships.
Well, we need to get rid. Look, this is the other thing that upsets me, is that it's our civic duty, right? Yeah. We as Americans, I can't speak for other countries, but it's our civic duty. You are supposed to sacrifice. Going to government is supposed to be a sacrifice, not a place that you go and you stay forever. You're supposed to go, set no laws against yourself, and return to private life, right? Yep. Because you're going to have to live under the laws that you set.
That you created.
That is not what is happening. You have people that have set this thing. It needs to be, you know, it needs to be dismantled by utilizing the laws that our founding fathers and founding mothers put in place, right? For us to be able to rebuild that. And we forget that. We say, oh, this country's so screwed up. Guess what? It's your fault.
Yeah. My fault. People need to take a healthy dose of responsibility, and not just for themselves and their own kid, but for the lives of those around you. And it doesn't, I think, come second nature to some folks. You would hope that people who served in the armed forces, that was sort of a prerequisite for getting in. You would hope that those who are cops and nurses and doctors, that, you know, love your neighbor and even go a step further, protect them. And that's the whole notion of joining a helping profession, that these people would be doing that. But what we're seeing in rather staggering numbers is an opposite. They are using the mantle of authority with which they've been entrusted to persecute the vulnerable and the constituents who elected them. But in particular, the vulnerable. Like, where do you get off as a 40 or 50-year-old principal taking your power base and wielding it against a 12-year-old child? and locking them out of their classroom for 8 hours today. I'm sorry. In what universe is this fair or right when that kid has a medical disability? You know what I mean? But yeah, people need to understand that responsibility and freedom is an action. It is an action verb. It's not the noun that we were all taught to think about. Like, it's not something your granddaddy handed you because he fought in World War II. It's not something that we grew up in the 70s and we're like, oh, we're going to learn to say the Pledge of Allegiance in 1978, and we're going to go to school and we're going to be free, and I can play with the boys. I had no idea until I talked to my mom one day that in the late 1960s she was playing on a sex segregated tennis team at the community college or whatever. I was like, what? Like, basically 4 years before I was born, they were sex segregating children's sports, but we were all born right after that hump. Right after the good life ensued, and we had all of these rights. It didn't matter our skin color, it didn't matter our gender, it didn't matter whatever. We were created equal, and we believed it. And we've gotten complacent. But having said that, I don't think it's an irresolvable problem. I think that it is actually in our DNA. They've done like studies on rats and other species, and there's Darwin's a thing. Like, the ones who survive have different DNA than the ones who expired. And nature and whatever, God and nurture and nature and environmental stimuli select survivors into existence. So while we are a long time, off our little tyranny lesson, in the 1700s, I really, really, really believe that the blueprint of DNA is something that was instilled in all of us, particularly those of us who are descended from people who fled to this country to escape communism. And I think that what we're seeing is a gradual awakening of these people to go, this probably wasn't about a virus, and it's not okay that they're picking on my kid's friend, even though my kid's safe today. I mean, that's the great lie of censorship, right? Censorship sounds so amazing. I don't know if you heard about this, Jason, but they were flirting with some bill or statute or action, big tech was, to go into people's phones and look at pornographic images and take it from there. And somebody alerted me to this. I haven't even had a moment's time to even research what exactly it is or who's doing it. And they said, what are your thoughts on this? And I said, look, I don't think there's anybody I know that is more near and dear on this whole persecution, child rape, little girls being raped 10 times a night by 70-year-olds when they're 7 years old, in a brothel, chained to a bed, in Asia, in South America, wherever these dark, horrendous crimes occur. I want them out, and I am willing to go very far down the path of doing almost anything to get them out and to stop these crimes. But you can't lose the baby with the bathwater. You can't. And we cannot sell out constitutional freedoms and our protections that protect your right to privacy under the 4th and 14th Amendment from cops storming into your garage and searching for weapons they think you have or drugs that they might think you have. You need a search warrant. You need probable cause. You cannot go roust average American law-abiding citizens just because you think they might have done something wrong. Like, that is not Crim Law 101. Like, we have protections that protect us from tyrannical searches in this country. And I don't care that it's an ends justify the means analysis. In my book, you don't go after pornographic images in somebody's phone without a warrant. Because once you do that, then it's the next topic and the next topic. And pretty soon you have a slippery slope where it's okay for the Gestapo or the new SS to come do anything they want because they think you're a bad man. And the same is true of censorship. Yeah, it'd be great to censor all the people who are idiots and who disagree with us. And my golly gosh, it is tempting. There are nights where I just tear my hair out and go, I look at my social media and be like, can just somebody shut the stupid people up? Oh my gosh, just shut them up, like muzzle them already. And then my left brain grabs a hold of my right brain and my primitive brain and goes, no. Because when you censor them, that puts in place a policy of censorship for no reason. And the next thing you know, somebody who doesn't like what you're saying is going to be muzzling you. And then you can't get the word out when there's some atrocity going down, whether it's child trafficking or burning Jewish people in ovens or whatever the corollary is for this time and this season, and then you're done. And so there are certain lines that we have to hold just because it's right. And yeah, it inures to the benefit of the criminals. There are plenty of times where we could have gone in with, knowing some guy was a drug dealer when I was at the DA's office in LA County in 1993 and 4. But the law said until you have probable cause, you can't go ransack his apartment or his house. And that same law is what protects us from living in a communist nightmare where they come and they rip your 4-year-old away from you in the middle of the night because some guy, in a position of power didn't like what you said on a bullhorn earlier today.
And they could spread a rumor,
Right.
It's village. Like, that's why we've progressed, and
Right.
I'm with you. Like, I struggle with that battle. I'm not an attorney, but I struggle with that battle every single time we go, right. When we go undercover and we go grab these kids, I struggle with that. And my anger at what's happening to them, in defense of the innocents. It's something that I struggle with, but Pastor Rudy and his clear line of right and wrong really helps that, right? It really helps that. And people like you who I respect give that different perspective where I say, you know what, that matters. It matters. And
it's a balancing act. It really is.
We can't become the thing that we're fighting against on the way to fighting against it. And I agree with that. Well, look, you have been with me and on this for a little while. I was testing your arm strength today.
If I have no bicep strength to hold my bullhorn tomorrow at 8 a.m. in front of Hughes Middle School, we'll all know why.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I'll pay for somebody to come hold it for you. Okay.
Sounds like a plan. I've got plenty of volunteers, I think. But any of your people who are within a day's drive, show up tomorrow in front of Hughes Middle School, because as far as I'm concerned, this is D-Day. This is the stand we make. You fight tyranny where you find it, and it found us today. And this is God's country. This is our founding fathers' country. We don't kick little kids out of school who are disabled because they can't mask and make them sit in the sun all day. We don't do that to Rosa Parks. We don't do that to the Little Rock Nine because they were Black children. And we don't do that in Orange County, California in 2021 just because people would like to see their children mask. You believe in the mask? Great. That's your decision. You believe in the vaccine? Great. That's your decision. Don't make my decision your decision, because at that point you're living in communist China, not the United States of America. And we need to pull together regardless of our personal viewpoints and go protect the vulnerable who are currently being hunted by people that we have put in power and who should know better. There are educators, for crying out loud. If they don't know history, God help us all. But I think the good parents of this country are about to give all of our educators and all of our politicians one hell of a history lesson.
Yeah,
and I know that
agree.
we will win this at the end of the day. The question is, how quickly can we contain the carnage and limit the erosion of civil liberties in the meantime? So speed is our friend. Platforms like this are our friend. I can't thank you enough for having me on tonight.
Awesome. I just want to leave everybody with the fact that what I've learned from you and, and traveling with you and, tying down blue tarps and windstorms and, doing that is that it is the individual. This is not what you chose that you thought you'd be doing at this stage of your life. It's not what I thought I'd be doing at this stage of our life. Frankly, none of us thought we would find ourselves in this position, but it can't be ignored, right? There's something that's called normalcy bias, right? When somebody gets into an accident, there's a psychological phenomenon that's called normalcy bias, which is why most accidents that are survivable end up becoming death sentences, because the person that's been in the accident is sitting there going, this isn't happening, this isn't happening, this isn't happening. And by that time, they're overcome by smoke. They're overcome by flame. They're overcome by circumstances that they could have avoided had they gotten in their head, okay, there was just an accident. What do I do now, right? What's my next best move? And we collectively have been caught in normalcy bias. And one of the things that inspires me the most is listening to people like you, and frankly, to have people that blocked me and yelled at me and wished death on me and, hoped that I ended up on a table with tubes in my throat and wished death on my family and my kids.
So you have the same haters that I do. Wow.
Well, it's economy of efficiency. We just share those things. But to see, a group of people that were dead set against me, speaking loudly against the things that I was saying, coming back and saying, Jason,
right.
I was cheering when you got silenced. I was cheering when you got blocked. I was cheering, that thing. And guess what happened to me last week, right? It doesn't stop with the people that you dislike. It goes and goes, and eventually we'll find your message and your opinion, and we'll shut you down and single you out. I don't care who you are. I'm not a Republican, and I'm not a Democrat, right? I'm a libertarian. And regardless of that, first and foremost, I am a freedom lover. I am a sovereignty lover. Our power was not given to us and never will be granted to us by man.
That's right.
It's given to us by God Almighty, and no one can stand in between that breach. It's when they try to that tyranny and communism and Marxism are allowed to thrive, because we forget our individual power. And Leigh, you are, I say this with all due respect in my heart. I don't admire a whole hell of a lot of people, but you are tip top of my list of somebody who is demonstrating, not just talking, and you're walking the talk, you're fighting the battle. I've seen you lose your voice. I've seen you in rainstorms. I've seen you in windstorms. I've seen you,
You've definitely seen the worst of me at this point.
I've seen you in these scenarios when you don't have to, right? Paying your own way, not being paid to be in a lot of these places, to simply stand on a stage, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people, to say you are powerful and it's going to be up to you. Having our building get struck by lightning, right?
That was a new one, even for you and me both, I think.
It was. I was so excited. It was awesome.
Oh, that was crazy times. But yeah, I think it's a testament to the power of the people and the fact that God was giving us a punctuation mark that night. But you don't fight tyranny by joining it. Beware pushing a communist agenda, because eventually they will come for you.
Yep.
And the power of the people when we were out on the road was just incredible. We had people the day I met you a second time in Sturgis, South Dakota. Later that weekend, I had a woman come up and say, you probably don't remember me. I was in North Platte, Nebraska 3 weeks ago when you guys spoke at the fairgrounds. And I was so inspired that I went back and met the governor in my state, and I didn't know him from Adam, and I'm just a nobody. I'm just a parent. They always start with these minimizing statements. You're not a nobody. Everybody who is here has a purpose for why they are here. And you can move mountains, particularly if you believe you can. My favorite bookmark as a child had a unicorn on it, and it said, some things must be believed to be seen. And I put it on a little piece of paper, and underneath I quoted Goethe, who said, whatever you dream, whatever you think you can do or dream you can, begin it, because boldness has genius and power and magic in it. And that's what I really want to leave the people who took the time today to listen to your amazing podcast. And thank you again for having me. I want to leave you with that. This is an absolutely winnable war. And we know we're going to win, because God wins and freedom wins. And always before, when the world is almost done itself in, we have stepped back from the brink with the power of the people, and we have won. The fact that you're interviewing me is proof that people survived earlier flirtings with tyranny and lived to tell the tale and reproduce and have children that became the people who are walking the earth today. So we can absolutely do it. And this mom came up, and after sort of saying, basically I'm just a mom, but I went back and I met my governor, and here's a picture of me in the newspaper with the governor, and we've already started rolling back all the bad things our legislature was doing and X, Y, and Z. And I heard this. If I had $1 for every person who told me this over the course of the last couple months, I don't think I'd need to be working again this lifetime. I had a woman after the Tulsa conference, which gave me the idea that this tour might be a good plan. And she said, I went home to Iowa, and I had never gone to a school board meeting. And I woke up that Monday morning, and I was still wet hair in the shower. And I thought, God, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm just a grandma or a mom or whatever, but I'm going to go to that school board meeting. And she walked into that school board meeting, and single-handedly, through the power of passion and conviction and some educated, stances that she had probably adopted after listening to other people speak, got them to roll back the mask mandate in her school district or county or whatever it was. The people are the ones with the power. We have always had the power. The government serves at our election. And don't you forget it. You are not nobody. You are their boss. And if they aren't doing right by you or your child, you make them do right. It's a very, very simple thing. You figure out what the bad plan is that's coming down in your school, your county, or whatever. You may not always have a ton of notice, like today with the masking of, the kid who got excluded from school due to the lack of a mask. You literally light up the phone lines with everybody you know, social media, whatever, and you get everybody there to fight the bad plan. And either they roll it back or they don't. And if they don't, you figure out who is in charge. There's always a ringleader, which principal, which supervisor on the board of supervisors, which county commissioner, who is pushing the charge, who's their leader. And then you go research them. And you find out every bad thing they've done, every immoral thing they've done, every illegal thing they've done, every unconscionable thing they've done that makes them unfit, either under the eyes of the law or just simple morality basics, to hold the position that they are in. And you make it known. You take a megaphone, you buy out the Walmart section, and you make it known in front of their school, in front of their county board, whatever it is. And, a lot of times there's not a rule or an ordinance in your city, state, or county that says you can't go to where they live on their sidewalk and exercise your First Amendment rights. Is it a popular move? No. My question to you is, do you want to be popular or do you want to live in North Korea? Because they're not playing fair with your child or your rights. Why are you going to extreme ends to act like you're having tea at high noon with the Queen of England? Like, they're doing things that are absolutely medically provably harmful to your health when you can't leave your house with freedom of travel or send your child to school in 100-degree heat to run a mile without a mask on the cross-country team. They are not doing things that are healthy or sustainable or constitutional by way of your child. Why are you being nice? Go make their lives a living heck on the sidewalk in front of their home. It's very simple. You get 200 people on the sidewalk and their kid can't go scootering or skateboarding and their wife can't go to Costco to buy groceries. And you now have the attention of the person that you need, the person in position of power who is pushing the bad agenda. And you make it very clear, this is a carrot and stick game. We want X. You do X, we're good. You don't do X, this is going to get worse, not better. Now, like I said, some jurisdictions, this isn't legal advice, have rules that say you can't go and exercise your First Amendment right within so many feet of a building or a residence or your elected official, whatever. But do your research in your city, state, or town and exercise your First Amendment rights wherever you can, but specifically in a way that is going to make the person who is making your life a living hell and not behaving well, make their life a living hell back. And at that point, you now have a recipe for forward advancement, because at some point they need to go home at the end of the night and not have the functional equivalent of a rioting mass of pissed off mama bears on their sidewalk calling them out for their bad plan. They're going to go home. They want to get dinner. They want to have a candlelight dinner with their spouse or date night. And if they can't do that, they're going to be listening to you. You need their attention, and then you need to tell them what you expect, and then you reward them by going away and thanking them when they do it. And if they don't do it, then you recall them or you unelect them or you sue them. But there is a much quicker thing to do besides recalling and unelecting and suing them, and that is simply using the power of your voice. But don't do it on a one-off basis. Get all your friends, all your friends to show up. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. Power in numbers, don't do this alone. And you have the power. All you need to do is believe it and act on it.
I love it. You and I could be here for 3 hours, but I won't test your arm. I won't test your arm.
I'm getting a little shaky. We're hitting muscle fatigue on the biceps.
Well, our phone calls are hilarious. Like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Oh crap, an hour and a half's gone by. So, but I just want to say thank you. I want you to know you have my respect. I'll always be there. We were in Tijuana, Mexico. You called and said, hey, we need you, in wherever
Nashville.
It was, Tennessee,
yeah.
Nashville, right?
Yeah.
So I've said to people from coast to coast now, you cannot say no to Leigh, right? You cannot say no to Leigh.
That's a dangerous operating basis you're setting in place, but dangerous times require dangerous moves. So I'm not going to say no if Jason Sisneros wants to back me up with his voice or his light or his love or his army of people. Again, thank you for your time tonight. If your people want to reach out, if they want to make use of the TV ads that we've already cut, or future ones that we will be cutting, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't reinvent these letters to your boards, to your schools and school districts. Don't reinvent the videos. I don't care if you copy everything I said or wrote verbatim and stand up and pretend to be me at this point. Like, this is not high school. You're not going to get in trouble for copying from your neighbor. Again, desperate times.
How do they get a hold of you, Leigh? How do they get a hold of you?
So it's a good question. I'm a little inundated in emails right now, but you can email me. I will get to it eventually. It's leigh.leigh.esk@gmail.com. You can text me. My cell phone is 714-594-9702. And you can also go on to the website. There's a nonprofit website dedicated to fighting for freedom. It's Advocates for Citizens' Rights, and the website address is citizens-rights.org. Again, they're both plural, citizens-rights.org. Under the research page, you've got all the stuff I've written and all the studies I know about. And under the videos page, you can watch the videos. And just make use of them. You don't need to ask. You don't need to beg permission or forgiveness. Just run with the ball. You got this. Go fight tyranny. We need you.
Awesome. You're amazing. I love you. I respect you. And I can't wait to see you again in person. And hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later. Please follow. Do you have any social media that you haven't been kicked off of that anybody can follow you on?
Oh my gosh. I do. I'm on Facebook. There's two Leigh Dundases, Leighdundas. One is an Australian chef, and he's a guy. And I feel the need to clarify, given that one of the high school English teachers in my daughter's old high school, asked a girl what gender pronoun she preferred this morning. I should clarify, I'm not a guy. I'm a little chubby from the tour, but I'm not a guy. So if you find a guy on Facebook with the name Leigh Dundas and he can cook, definitely not me, because I'm not a dude and I definitely can't cook. On Instagram, it's Leigh Dundas, the number 4 and the word freedom. It's Leigh Dundas for freedom. I'm in Facebook jail right now because I published a post that said, I have 2 questions for you. 1, do you believe the Holocaust occurred? And 2, do you really think Hitler started it by telling people he was going to bake certain people in ovens? And apparently, according to the new Chinese Communist Party, they have 6 new, I think, communist Chinese fact checkers that are actually starting to run Facebook. I don't know. That makes me some sort of a crazy person. So I got another 30-day jail sentence out of Facebook for asking if the Holocaust was real and if people realize that it's a slow-boiled frog game. Oh, and the hashtag was, those who don't remember history are destined to repeat it, hashtag slow-boiled the frog. But I'll be out in a couple of weeks, probably only to get another jail sentence. And in the meantime, you can find me on Instagram.
Well, it's, the frog contingency is out hard for you,
Yeah, well, you know what? I was born like in a good fight. Apparently I wasn't meant to get Botox and do my nails every week like a lot of the women I know. So give me a fight, no manicures in sight. Give me a bullhorn and I'll be there, because nothing fuels my rage and my sense of justice more than watching injustice occur. And that's my mission in life. And I know, Jason, that it's yours as well. We need to do right by the people who cannot do right by themselves until they can one day do right by themselves and pay it forward as well. And I know there were people in your life, and there have been people in my life who were there for us during tough times and believed in us. And the reason we are able to be the powerful people out in front of this like we are is because somebody believed and somebody said, keep doing you. And so to all of those people out there that are having a moment of doubt, know that it's not a contagious virus. It's something you overcome. You check the box. You go, I'm scared shitless. I'm nervous. I don't know how the day is going to end. And then you put your big girl underwear, big boy underwear on anyway, and you grab your bullhorn and you go fight down tyranny. And if you do it loud and you do it often and you do it with the belief that you will win and you do it with a lot of your friends, you will win. We always do.
Amen. Well, there you have it, folks. Miss Leigh Dundas. I am so happy that you came and joined us. Thank you. I've just been watching the comments, but everybody is very, very grateful. They've been putting in the websites. We'll do that. For those of you that are watching right now, you'll be able to watch this. We'll repost it on YouTube. It'll be up for 5 minutes. They'll take it down. We'll be on Rumble, The Bald Avenger on Rumble. Please go follow that channel. They haven't been out, they've been real supportive of what we're doing. The Bald Avenger on Telegram now has picked up a ton of momentum. I'm also over there just in case I get kicked off of everything else. So thank you all. We're going to be back with the next Bald Avenger show here within about a week, and I'll be announcing that later. Leigh, thank you so much for being with us, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, I'll see you in September, Jason. Take care.
You got it.
Bye, guys.